Hello, welcome to Surface Explore Record episode 16, where I'm showing you a three-part methodology that I use to build applications. That three-part methodology is Surface Explore Record. Surface meaning you surface decisions that you need to make. Explore meaning you explore different options for the decisions. And finally, record. You record those decisions in records so that you can give them to your AI later, both as a blueprint to create your application and then also as a way to compare what's been created to what you want to do. Now, last week, we finished our end-to-end test suite, and we also finished building the CloudFormation infrastructure as code that's going to be used to build our infrastructure. What that means is, even though we're still going through our implementation plan, we are now officially in the deploy phase of our application. The next thing that we're going to do is to begin creating the CD, the continuous delivery or continuous deployment step of our project, so that each time we make a change and when we're ready, if we've done our testing, we can automatically deploy our project based on the infrastructure that was created last time. So let me take a break here. I'm going to switch over to Claude code running in a terminal in VS Code, and we'll pick it up there. Okay, I'm back, and like I said, I have Claude code running in a terminal in VS Code. Like we talked about a few weeks ago when we started the build phase, I'm going to begin, like I do every session, with my pickup command. That tells Claude to go through and read the necessary documents, especially my implementation plan and my implementation status, read some GitHub history, and then also to give some suggestions on what to work on next. Now, I know that the next part of my implementation plan is phase I3 because we finished phase I1 and I2 last time. Now notice that this is the CD pipeline. This is the continuous delivery, continuous deployment, depending on who you talk to, it can be used either way, part of the process. And this is where we actually use GitHub to push our application into deployment. But I want to show you what to do if you get to something like this where Claude is saying, hey, this is what we need to do next. Let me just get back to show you. So Claude is saying right here, what's next? Phase I3 CD pipeline. And you say, well, I'm not really sure what that means. So we're going to use AI to our advantage, not just to tell it to go ahead and do it, but we want to make sure that we understand what the AI is doing. It may have something in mind that we didn't plan. Maybe it's even a hidden decision that we didn't know about. And this is the time to stop, make sure we understand what's going on before we actually push this into a production environment somewhere. So I'm going to have Claude begin running this. What I'm telling it to do is that we're going to build the CD deployment pipeline, but I want it to explain to me what that is and how will it work with my TaskFlow application. Again, it's very important that when you don't understand something, you stop, ask the AI to explain, and keep going until you understand it. And then if something is not like you want it, then work with the AI to actually change it. So notice it's doing exactly what I said. It's telling me what CD means. It's telling me how it works with TaskFlow. Notice that it's telling me exactly how it works. When we push to main, it will automatically trigger the CD pipeline. It's going to authenticate to AWS. AWS is what I chose earlier as my deployment target. It's going to build and push the images, so it's actually going to create whatever it needs to push to AWS. It's going to deploy any infrastructure changes using the CloudFormation infrastructure as code that we used last time. It's going to run any database migrations that are required by our changes. It's going to run the containers in the EC2 instances. It's going to do the smoke checks and different tests, and then there will be a rollback procedure if something goes wrong. So it tells me all of this so that I can read it and completely understand what's going on before we actually do it. Now, there's one more thing that's very important here, and I know this is something that is a concern for any developers, and I've heard from many vibe coders and AI builders, especially those without a software development background, and they're really concerned about security. So I put a prompt here that says, before we build the deploy pipeline, this is where this gets to be very, very important. Security, especially your keys and your credentials, become very important because we have to have those keys and those credentials to be able to deploy but we want to make sure that they're kept secret and safe. So I just have a prompt here, and I'm saying that I want to make sure our secrets and credentials are safe. So I'm asking it to do three things: audit the repo, look for anything that may already be leaked, and then I want it to explain our model and what we're doing to protect our keys and credentials, and finally point out anything that it finds that's risky. So what Claude is going to do now is he's going to review the entire repo, go back through all the code it's already built, but now it's looking specifically for places where our keys or our credentials may be leaked. Don't think of this as a full security audit. It's not. It's just one pass and one way to double check that the process you're planning to use to deploy is as safe and secure as it can be at this point. So I'm going to take a break while Claude is doing this, and I'll come back and show you the results. Okay, Claude is finished, and let's look at the audit that Claude just did. First, like I said, it looked at the repo itself and looked at the Git history to see if there's any places where keys or credentials may have been leaked. It went through everything, and it found no real secrets are committed anywhere. It tells you everything that it checked. Finally, again, the foundation is solid before we touch I3. That's what we want to make sure. Before we get to this point, is there anything that's been leaked already? Next, in part 2, I ask it to explain the model in plain English. This is where it's going to go through and tell you how it plans to protect your keys and your credentials as we go into deployment phase. It's very important that you understand this, that you would be able to read through this, know exactly what's happening to your keys. If you don't understand something, stop and ask. For instance, I'm using OIDC to make sure that my keys are safe, my AWS credentials are safe. If you don't understand that, you would want to ask, what do you mean by that? What is OIDC? And then finally, in part 3, it's looking at I3, part I3, to make sure that the habits there are what we need as we begin building our deployment workflow to make sure that the secrets are kept safe. And again, it goes through everything, and it says that the repo is clean and the model is sound. So it looks like our audit came back fine. It looks like it didn't find any secrets. It didn't find any places going forward where secrets or credentials would be leaked. And it says that the deploy.yaml, which will be the workflow that GitHub uses to deploy, is also clean and safe. So the next thing I'm going to do, just like before, is just say enter plan mode and implement part I3. Remember, this is going back to the implementation plan that we built several episodes ago back in the planning phase. It's still following that plan. It's still going to go step by step in plan mode to make sure that it has everything that it needs. It's going to still update my status file so that I know where we're going. I'm staying in control while it's doing the heavy work of the coding. So while this is working, I'm going to take a break. I'll come back in a few minutes and we'll see what Claude has come up with. Okay, welcome back. Claude Code has finished with part I3, and this is where things are starting to get really exciting, because notice the first thing it says is that it built deploy.yaml file. This deploy.yaml file is the GitHub workflow that will be used to push my code, push my application into the AWS account that I'm going to assign it to, and it'll be able to run then, and it'll be live at that point. So we're getting very, very close to deploying the application. Right now, all we've done is we've created the mechanism to deploy it. We haven't started deploying it yet. We've got one more step before we do that. So as you read through, you can see that everything is set up. It set up the OIDC authorization for GitHub to connect to AWS. It's not connected yet, but the path is there. It created the build and push step. It did all of this for us, and it updated some documentation. But just like before, I want to tell it to review what it did. And I want to specifically say review what it did, compare it to the documentation, whether it's the decision records or it's the technical requirements document. I'm saying take what you did, compare it to the documentation that we've created. That's why we went through all those steps and the Surface Explorer record methodology to get the documentation. Now we can compare what was built to our plan, and I told it to tell me any inconsistencies, and this time I said make a recommendation of whether we should change the code or change the documentation. And again, I said give me options. Tell me what you think we should do at this point. So Let's see what happens when Claude comes back, and we'll go through these inconsistencies and fix those. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Notice that Claude Code has finished the audit, finished the review, comparing what it did in step I3 with my documentation. It found a few things. For instance, it found this missing environment production gate, and its recommendation is to change the code. It found ECR repository secret is not used, and it says to change the documentation. This is the right move. Somehow in our documentation, it said to use this secret. We don't want to do that. We don't want that in our code. So we're going to change the documentation. So now all I'm going to do is step through each of these and have Claude make these changes either based on its requirement or my decision on it. The main thing is that I understand what's happening and that I'm ready to make that decision. If I'm not, then I want to continue discussing it with it. In other words, get it to explain more about it. But I'm going to make these decisions offline, come back in a few minutes, and we'll continue into I4. I4 gets really important because this is where we start setting up our external services. So stick around, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, welcome back. So Claude has finished the review, and we finished fixing all the inconsistencies that we found in I3. Now we're ready to move to I4. And let's stop just a minute and look at our status file. And if you notice, each or many of these items in I4 are actually manual things that I need to do. Things like the Cloudflare origin CA or the Cloudflare proxy record, making sure that the DNS is set up. Many of these things are things that I need to do. And when this comes to deployment, you're going to find that there are things like this that you need to set up. So this is a good place where you can interact with your AI to understand what parts you need to do, and so that you understand what those are. So I've got a prompt here. I just said, as we get ready for phase I4, it looks like there are a lot of manual steps that I need to make. Can you give me a general idea of those steps without detail? At this point, I just want a high-level understanding of what's happening. So now Claude is going to go through and tell me some of the things that I need to do in order to get ready for deployment. And notice the first thing that it says is an AWS account set up. Now, I already have an AWS account set up. I have many of them set up, and I know which one I want to use for this project. But maybe there are many of you that have never used AWS, and you say, well, I like the idea of using AWS, but it kind of scares me. So I'm just going to step you through a way that you can work with Claude through any of these, whether it's AWS, setting up Cloudflare, setting up Resend. So I'm just saying, take me step by step through setting up an AWS account, including best practices for account security and preparing for deploying TaskFlow. If there are options, explain each option with strengths, weaknesses, and trade-offs, and your recommendation and explanation. And I notice this is the same methodology I'll use in the Explore part of Surface Explore Record. So again, we're not just telling AI to tell us what to do, we're asking it for options. We're asking it to not just tell us what the options are, but tell us the strengths, weaknesses, and trade-offs of each one and what it recommends and why. So now what we're going to end up with is a step-by-step description of how we can set up our own AWS account with options. So if there's something that there's a choice between you can do A, B, or C, or all three, it'll tell us that, and then we can decide which one we want to do or have a further conversation with the AI to make that decision. Now, you don't have to do this just with AWS. You can do this, like I said, with Cloudflare, with Resend, with if you're using Supabase, anything like that that you're using, get the AI to explain it to you. But don't just say, tell me what to do. Ask it to give you options so that you can make the decision on how to do it. Many vibe coders have gotten trapped because the AI told them exactly how to set up, say, Supabase or Vercel, and later they find out, well, that setting, there were different options, and I would have chosen something different. So ask the AI for options. So notice, now what it's doing is just giving me step-by-step directions on how to set up my AWS account. And it's telling me some things that I need to decide. Notice this, a guiding principle throughout. Very good information. The root user and long-lived access keys are the risk. That's right. And so you want to pay attention to this. If you don't understand, for instance, what is a root user? Ask it, what is a root user? What is a long-lived access key? Get it to explain it to you and why that's the risk. So here is a step-by-step instructions that I can use to go through and set up my AWS account and set up all the AWS parameters so that I am ready for TaskFlow. Notice I specifically said TaskFlow So I get to step 7, TaskFlow specific items to help me set up my AWS account so that it's ready for TaskFlow. Now, I'm not going to set this up on camera. Obviously, I'm not going to show you my credentials or how I log in, even my account number, things like that. But you can follow these steps for any of the manual operations that you need to do to prepare for deployment. When we come back next week, as we continue deployment, I'll show you what is finished at that point, and then we can continue with deployment. And I believe next week we should be able to finally deploy TaskFlow into AWS and see it running on the cloud. Thank you for joining. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.